2 weeks ago, we celebrated the 75th anniversary of VE Day, and people put out the bunting and the Union Jacks. And I love what this couple in Rushton did with their garden. Nice of Her Majesty to turn up. People chatted across fences, socially distanced, of course. Some people played old songs from yesteryear, and we watched the Queen's speech. What a welcome relief those celebrations were from all the doom and gloom of the last few weeks. The VE Day anniversary was just the encouragement that we needed in a time of national crisis. Back in Joel's day, God's people dreamt of a VE Day like no other, the day of the Lord, a day when God would overthrow all Israel's enemies. Wonderful! Such dreams are just the thing one needs when you're going through tough times. And Israel is. They've just suffered a devastating plague of locusts, destroying all their crops and food. A swarm of locusts, miniature lawnmowers, trimmers and chainsaws, all rolled into one, have laid waste the land. Joel describes the plague as like a foreign invading army. A nation has invaded my land, powerful and without number. It has the teeth of a lion, the fangs of a lioness. It has laid waste my vines and ruined my fig trees. It has stripped off their bark and thrown it away, leaving their branches white. It must have been awful being a farmer, looking at your fruit trees and all your fields, looking at all that hard work gone overnight. It's desperate times for many people. I wonder what comforting word will the prophet bring? What word of encouragement will the prophet preach to a demoralized nation? Don't you hate being woken by your alarm clock? You're having a lovely dream and then you're wrenched from your deep sleep by the annoying sound of the alarm. Wake up! That's the gist of Joel's message. Wake up! This plague is a warning. It's a warning of worse to come. Chapter 2, verse 1. Blow the trumpet in Zion. Sound the alarm on my holy hill. Let all who live in the land tremble, for the day of the Lord is coming. It's close at hand. I reckon that must have been like a sucker punch to the guts, knocking the wind out of the people. A plague of locusts, what a nightmare. But there's worse to come. Really? Yes, says Joel. The day of judgment, the day of the Lord. This devastation is nothing compared to that. And it's coming. How awful. God's people have been dreaming of a VE Day like no other. The day of the Lord when God will defeat all her enemies. But Joel pours cold water on such nationalistic dreams. The day of the Lord is not going to be a patriotic, nationalistic celebration, us versus them. It's a day where God will judge everyone, including his own people. They don't get carte blanche when it comes to rebelling against God. They're also going to have to face judgment for their actions. God won't turn a blind eye to their sin and rebellion. Verse 11, the Lord thunders at the head of his army. His forces are beyond number. The day of the Lord is great, is dreadful. Who can endure it? You know, many people ask, is COVID-19 a judgment from God? Is God judging the world for this, that, or the other sin? Well, I don't have biblical authority to pronounce on such matters. That's above my pay grade, as they say. But what I am qualified to say is this. Diseases like COVID-19, disasters like the plague of locusts in Joel's day, they're wake-up calls. They're wake-up calls for us. They remind us of eternal priorities. Yes, they remind us we live in a broken, fallen world. Yes, they remind us that we're mortal, that we don't live forever. But they do more. They remind us judgment's coming. The day of the Lord is near, says Joel. and we need to be ready. Jesus said the same. Jesus, the most loving and kind man who ever lived. He also warned us, just like Joel did, judgment's coming, and we need to get ready. One day, we don't know when, Jesus will return, and we're going to have to give an account for our lives and all the things we've done. Have we glorified God, or have we robbed him of his praise? I was talking to a man recently. He'd been laid up in bed for a few days with the blues, and he just couldn't get up. And eventually he got himself up, and he dragged himself out, and he went down to the shops. And he trudged all around the store, and he got himself some food and supplies and all that stuff. And at the end of it, he felt pretty good. He'd managed to get up and do some shopping. And as he walked back home along his street to his house, suddenly all the doors of the street flung open and people came out and people started clapping and people brought out pots and pans, started cheering. And he thought, oh, this is nice. And he waved, thank you, how nice. And he got home and he thought, how kind are my neighbours, cheering me just for doing the shopping. It's amazing. And as he got in at 8:05, he looked at the calendar and it was Thursday. That man had robbed our frontline health workers of the praise due to them. And that, I'm afraid, is what many people do when it comes to God. God, the International Health Service, the one who made us, the one who knows totally what's good for us, the one whose rules make total sense for living a morally healthy life. Well, we've robbed him of the praise he deserves by ignoring him. Our lives have brought shame on our Maker. We've robbed him of the praise he deserves by doing our own thing, breaking his rules, living our lives our own way and hurting others. And we all have, haven't we? Who can say they've never done anything wrong? Joel says, the day of the Lord is near. Jesus said the same. Do you remember Grenfell Tower and all those people who died? In Jesus' day, there was a terrible disaster. A tower collapsed. And Jesus mentioned this to make an important point about judgment. He said, those 18 who died when the tower in Siloam fell on them, do you think they were more guilty than all the others living in Jerusalem? I tell you no. But unless you repent, you too will all perish. Notice how Jesus knew the exact number of people who died. 18. People are precious to God. We say so many thousand people have died from COVID-19. None of us know the exact number. We may never know. But God knows the exact number because each person is precious to him. People are never just numbers and statistics to God. People are precious to God. Judgment Day has nothing to do with God being vindictive. And notice too that Jesus didn't say, well, those 18 people who died, well, they deserve to die. And that tower collapsed. He didn't say that, did he? He asked, were they more guilty than anyone else living in Jerusalem? Of course not. But learn the lesson. One day, you will die, and you too will be judged for what you've done. And then Jesus told them and us what we need to do to escape judgment. Now, some people think, well, so what? I don't care. I'm not worried. I've got nothing to fear on the day of judgment. I'm pretty good. I'm better than Hitler. I'm better than Stalin. I'm better than my next door neighbour who's having an affair with the lady 4 doors down. I've never been in prison. I'm definitely better than my boss. I'm one of the good guys. And I'm sure you are. I'm not saying you aren't. But are you perfect? Have you always kept your words in check? Have you loved your neighbour as yourself? Really? Have you loved the Lord your God with all your mind, with all your soul, with all your heart, and with all your strength? 70% is not good enough. 98.5% is not good enough. The pass mark in God's eyes is 100%. How could it be anything less? At what point do you ask an infinitely good God to turn a blind eye to evil? Think, at whatever point you ask him to look away from the wrong things you've done, at that point, God stops being perfectly good. He ceases to be a holy God. So our big question is, how can we hope to escape judgment? The great scientist Donald J. Trump said in a news conference how things like bleach can kill coronavirus. So what we got to do, says the great scientist Trump, we got to work out how to inject bleach into infected people so we can kill this super smart bug and cure them. I loved how all these top scientists in that news conference are all looking down at the floor, hoping that the camera doesn't catch the look of horror on their faces. Because, well, everybody knows if you inject bleach into people, it may kill the coronavirus, but it's also going to kill the patient. Friends, you know, this is God's conundrum when it comes to us. How does God wipe out the even deadlier virus of sin which is infecting us without killing us? How does God disinfect a sinful heart? How does God disinfect our sinful thoughts, our sinful motives, without killing the patient? To wipe out the bacteria of sin from within us would involve our death. It's a conundrum. How will God solve it for us? Because we can't solve it. The answer is the cross. There was a time when the sword of God's judgment was hanging over my head. But on the cross, Jesus, the perfect Son of God, took the judgment I deserved. He died so I could go free. So how do we access this? Well, just like Jesus said, Joel tells God's people it requires true repentance. Verse 12, even now declares the Lord, return to me with all your heart, with fasting and weeping and mourning. Rend your heart and not your garments. Return to the Lord your God, for he is gracious and compassionate, slow to anger and abounding in love, and he relents from sending calamity. The people in Joel's day, they ripped their clothes when they were mourning. I won't demonstrate that, it's not going to be pretty. Joel says, rend your heart, not your garments. God isn't fooled by outward shows of, religious rituals or whatever. He sees the heart. You can't say, oh, I was baptized when I was a kid, I'll be fine. You can't say, well, I go to church twice a year or whatever. The question is, have you turned to Jesus? Have you turned away from your sin? The only way to escape the destruction of the day of judgment is to turn to Jesus. Joel promises God's people, everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. What a wonderful promise. I once had a meal in the officers' mess aboard the flagship of the US Navy's 7th Fleet. To serve aboard that ship, you need to be an American, which I am not. And you also need to be a fully trained member of the US Navy, which I am not. To eat in the officers' mess and not the sailors' canteen, you need to serve in the US Navy for a number of years and you have to prove you have what it takes to be an officer. which I haven't. And yet there I was, eating with the Admiral in the officers' mess. Now, how did I get in there? I didn't gate crash my way in. There's no way I could have overpowered the fully armed, highly trained and deadly Navy SEALs guarding the ship. And yet here I was, eating with the Admiral. How? Well, it's all down to who you know. I got an invite from a friend, and that's how God's people will get through Judgment Day. God will ask, did you accept my son's invitation to come and dine with him and me in glory? If you did, welcome. I hope you have taken up that invitation from God. It's still available, even now. I pray that you will take it so that you can escape the day of judgment. Remember, everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. Hallelujah.